Floridahockeynow podcast. It's Colby Guy here. Got George with me today, and we're gonna go over a few of the hot takes you guys shared with us over the past week. So we started a series last week called the Florida Panthers Temp Check, where you guys sent us some of your hottest takes. And we gave a few reviews to them. We had a two-part series there on the website. If you want to go check it out, subscribe to Florida Hockey Now Plus, where you get all of the best Florida Panthers coverage, as well as we're going to be dropping two exclusive podcast episodes starting in October. So be on the lookout on that. But we have a few good ones here today. How are you doing, George?
I'm great, Colby. How are you, my friend?
I'm doing good. Just trying to get through it. I know August is a pretty slow month in hockey, and we have a couple headlines in August with the World Junior Championship, but other than that, nothing really. We did just hear today that Justin Sourdif will not be playing in the World Junior for Canada. If you want to learn more about that, we're going to have a story up that was posted this morning. And we're waiting on if Mackie Samoskevich is going to make Team USA. Looks like he is. He's on their preliminary roster, but he was on the roster last year. He should make it.
Yeah, I mean, because you've got a lot of NHL guys that have signed ELCs from the last team. Mackey's going back for a sophomore season at Michigan. He'll make that team.
Of course. And also in Europe, Jacob Koss made Team Czech Republic and Kasper Pudio made Team Finland. So there should be a couple Florida Panthers to watch during the World Juniors this month. So that will get underway next week.
And now the rest of the world gets to watch hockey like we do, right? 90-degree weather. So.
Oh yeah, of course. Everyone gets.
They're all like, "Oh, it should be Christmas. We should be wrapping. No, it should be 90 degrees, and you should be wearing flip flops if you're going to be watching hockey, because that's how we do it. That's how we do it."
Yeah, given the whole Florida Panther experience, so that should be a leg up for Samoskevich and all the other guys that are looking to come over. But it should be pretty interesting. But speaking of some young guys, I got a list of hot takes here that we've received either via the comment section of these temperature check articles and via Twitter. And the first one happens to be about one of the young players that might compete for a roster.
First off, Colby, how can people reach you on Twitter?
Oh, yeah, they can reach me on Twitter at Colby D Guy, and they can reach George on Twitter at George Richards if you guys want to send us your takes or anything else you want to send us. I find entertainment in some of the weird things you guys send me sometimes, so entertain me. But anyways, we've got some entertainment for you because the first of these takes is a bit of a doozy here. We've got one from our good friend Survey J of the Florida Hockey Now comment section. He says Grigory Denisenko makes the Panthers out of camp, plays with Barkov on line one, and scores 50-plus points. George, what do you think about that one?
That's not really that hot of a take, right? I mean, I think it's time for Grigory Denisenko to kind of take off. We didn't get to see a lot of him last year. He had the fractured kneecap last season. Was that what it was?
Yeah, it was.
So he missed fractured kneecap. He missed the second half of the season with Charlotte. Had a pretty good start to that season with the I keep wanting to say Charlotte Knights, the Checkers. Listen, I mean, you look at Grigory Denisenko as a high-skilled forward. You hate to, he's smallish. He's got skill. He's got great speed. He's got good hands. Are you going to really put him on the fourth line? Probably not. You probably want him in a top six role, kind of like a Carter Verhaeghe type. Carter Verhaeghe, if you remember his last year with the Tampa Bay Lightning, was a fourth line guy fighting for minutes because that really wasn't his forte. You put him up on the top line, playing with the likes of, Duclair and Huberdeau and Barkov. and you see some success there. So I don't know if how big a take that is, how to take that is, because it's very possible that Denisenko could end up somewhere down the line being on that top line and really thriving. As far as the 50 points go, I don't know. I think if you're playing up with those guys, yeah, that number is going to be there because you're going to get the opportunity to get the points. And if you're not producing those kind of points, you won't be playing on that top line. So if Denisenko does make the team and does play on the top line or even on the second line with, I don't even know who, Bennett or maybe Anton is the second line center, whatever it is. If he's playing up with those guys, he's going to need to produce those kind of numbers to remain up there. So, yeah, that's pretty good. Sure.
Yeah, I mean, the one thing with this take is I don't know if he could make the team, and I mean, he's kind of been a bit in and out of the lineup the last couple of years with the Tampa Bay sharing of the affiliation, where Tampa Bay kind of made their own guys in the lineup more than Florida's guys.
And that
So
was a weird year. That was a weird year, too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but the point was he didn't get in the lineup too much during that year. Granted, he had 7 games in the NHL that year where he had 4 assists in 7 games, and he played with Barkov for a decent deal of that time. So you've seen that connection before. But the thing is, coming off of an injury like a fractured kneecap and coming into a training camp where you're training with, you're competing against a lot of NHL level guys who don't necessarily need to go past waivers, where maybe you got a guy in Colin White who I discussed in the last temperature check who got kind of close to a 20-goal season at some points and has some kind of potential to be a scoring option that you can go in the top 6 if he kind of breaks out there. And I mean, he's a guy that had injury problems the last couple of years. And then you have 2 other guys that are a little bit more known to be fourth line guys, but the Panthers with putting these guys who were looked at as fourth line guys or fringe NHLers with guys like Carter Verhaeghe or Anthony Duclair, who was kind of falling out of favor, although he was an All-Star the year before he got picked up by the Panthers. So you maybe see some things with those guys, and then you also have Alexei Heponiemi who has to go through waivers. So maybe that's something where you don't know if he'll actually make it out of camp. But when you're looking at playing with Barkov and possibly putting up 50 points, if you're playing with Barkov, you got to be putting up those numbers, and he's the type of skill guy that can do it. So I wouldn't say it's that hot of a take. I'm just wondering if he makes the roster out of camp. And there's also Anton Lebchi that can make it out of camp as well. He's a very talented guy. He put up a lot of numbers in Finland, which is a more defensive, physical game than the NHL as well. Granted, the competition isn't as where the NHL is, but it was a very physical league that took a lot to score points, and he was the best scorer in the league. So there's something to look at there.
Yeah, there's going to be a lot of options. And yeah, you're right. I mean, it's going to be tough for me to even make this team, but time is, we've been talking about this guy. He was drafted in 2018. This is 2022. Yeah, it's time to see what he's got. And again, there's a lot of competition on this team. He's going to have a really good camp.
For sure. And then
to make this team, you're going to have a really good camp, unless your name is Sasha Barkov.
Yeah. And then another guy that, I mean, we were talking about briefly that we might have a discussion on if he can make it. This is even something that someone left. I'm just trying to divulge into this conversation here, but is Justin Sourdif a guy you see competing for a roster spot as well?
No, I think here's my thought when it comes to Justin Sourdif. Last year he had such a great, what did we call that last year? Development camp, prospect, whatever the heck that thing was, the prospect showcase in Tampa. He had a fantastic showing there. And then he had a great start to training camp, but you always knew what the end result was going to be with him. And that was him going back to his junior team, which was then the Vancouver Giants. So you knew that he was not going to make the Panthers last year, no matter how good he looked. This year, that's not the case. Now, if he puts up that kind of showing or better, there is there is a spot for him on the Panthers if he shows that. So I don't think it's going to happen. I think they would much rather him go to Charlotte, start his pro career at the AHL level, and really dominate there, kind of like Owen Tippett did when he first made his first real true pro season in Springfield before he got hurt. But I think that's where they would like to see the development. He's only 20 years old. But again, if he has a gigantic rookie camp, carries that over into training camp, maybe.
Yeah, exactly. Like the thing with Florida is now that Anthony Duclair is injured, they lost a couple guys. They need some dynamic options on offense, and
And you can't beat that price tag.
of course. So you got a couple young guys that can really be in the swing of it, and all of a sudden, if Justin Sourdif shows up and he looks like he's NHL ready, you can't necessarily say no to that. And the thing with Sourdif is that you can always send him down. He's waiver eligible, so if you don't like what you see from him when you start him up there, they can always send him down. So that's something that also works in his favor. Of course, it might mean that they have to put someone on waivers in order to do it. But if he's playing well enough in preseason and training camp that he's making you want to see what he can do in the NHL regular season, I don't really see an issue.
There you go.
And then just another one of these takes that isn't necessarily a hot take that we can go over as well. It's just kind of a little debate here more than a hot take. Will Matthew Tkachuk lead the Florida Panthers in goals? This one comes from Charles. It's funny. This tweet was actually deleted because it wasn't a hot enough take, but I took a mental note of it because this was something I wanted to talk about. So shout out to that.
Okay, Matthew Tkachuk, will he lead the Panthers in goals next year? Yeah, I mean that's definitely within the realm of possibility, and then probably maybe likelihood. Sasha Barkov, Jonathan Huberdeau had the big year for Florida last year, but that was in points. Most of his points came off assists. Sasha Barkov led the Panthers in goals. What did he have? 35, something like that.
He was at 39 or 38. He was pretty close to the
Okay, yeah, he
40
was one
mark.
off from 40. That's right. He didn't play the last two games against, those last two games, Montreal and Ottawa, would have got him to the 40 goal plateau. But Chuck scored 42 last year. I think it'll be between him and Barkov, and maybe Sam Reinhart.
Yeah, like it just depends on what kind of showing you see from Barkov, and also if you put Kachuk and Barkov together, because there is the opportunity where they do the same thing as they did with Huberdeau and Barkov, where they put them on different lines. And Sam Bennett's a guy that Kachuk has played with, and they've seen moderate success together when they've done it. So that is an option that the Panthers have, to where they put Kachuk with a familiar guy, and then they put Verhage, Barkov, and then, for example, like a Denisenko or Anton Levchi or Colin White, if something works out there where you feel
Or Sam
comfortable.
Reinhart.
True. If I want to split up Reinhart and Lundell, that is also an option. It just depends on if they want to split Reinhart and Lundell and then maybe put Lundell with a couple of those fourth liner players. But you probably can see maybe it just depends on if Barkov's in that passing role and setting up Kachuk more. But if they're playing together, they're going to be both shooting. So
Yeah,
it
and I
should
think,
be
and
interesting.
listen, and Kachuk is a very underrated passer. Like we heard a lot in the aftermath of this trade. People in Calgary talking about how bad Huberto's defense was, and how bad Kachuk's passing was. I think on both sides that's a little underrated. I think Huberto's defense is better than most people think, and I think Kachuk's passing is better than most people think. I think he can be a very good passer. I think he's going to complement whoever's on his line. So I don't think I think you're going to find guys looking for opportunity. So I don't know if there's going to be a set role. Barkov is now a shooter. I mean, Barkov shoots the puck now. So, and we know Tkachuk does, but Barkov is also a facilitator. He's also a passer. So I think they'll work well together.
Yeah, like both of them have that dynamic sense of the game where you don't know what they're gonna do. They can either fire off a really good shot or they can make a really good pass. And I mean, watching Matthew Tkachuk, he pulls some stuff out of his hat all the time where he can make a fancy pants little pass there, give it to a guy in the slot, and
Fancy
then
pants.
it's a goal. So I mean,
He
it
has
just adds
fancy
a
pants.
really
He
good
has fancy
dynamic.
pants. Yeah, dynamic. I like it.
Yeah. Yeah, it just adds that really good dynamic there where you don't necessarily know what they're going to do. And if it's a line of Barkov, Verhage, and Kachuk there, where all three of these guys are pretty fast, shoot the puck, make a little pass there, you don't know who's shooting the puck, and they can all give the puck to each other.
Yeah, very nice. Yeah, agreed.
All right, so that was not that hot of a take, but it's a fun
That was
conversation.
good. That was good. I like it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but got another doozy here we can talk about as well. The Florida Panthers will re-sign Jonathan Huberdeau in July from PantherBot in the comment section of the article.
So how do you rank these things? Is from like hot is like completely outrageous, ain't gonna happen. Is that a 100?
Yes. Sometimes you can go over, like I
Yeah,
did.
yeah, that's like a 110. Yeah, I don't think this. Well, I mean, listen, let's just preface it with this: if the salary cap were to go up $5 million or something, if the Panthers were to say we don't want Sam Bennett or Sam Reinhart here anymore, and they get rid of them, um, never say never, right? Never say never, and maybe he comes back. Jonathan Huberdeau does come back, but no, I don't think so. I think Jonathan Huberdeau. I think we talked about this um, when it came down to the whole Uyghur slash Huberdeau. You were only going to sign one, and now you've signed Tkachuk. You gave Huberdeau's money to Tkachuk, so what's left? I mean, there really isn't anything left. So um, Jonathan Huberdeau is going to be looking for a long-term extension. Jonathan Huberdeau is not going to give any kind of, well, I know that this year's the problem might be one of the last years. Look, I'll take a 1 year. He's not going to do that. This is Jonathan Huberdeau's last kick at the can. He's going to sign a long-term deal, either in Calgary or somewhere else. And it won't be here.
Yeah, definitely agreed. And I mean, looking at the way the salary cap works for the Panthers, they're gonna have a lot of money opened up. But I think they wanted to
Sure.
get younger with the Huberto move, and they also have some holes to address on defense as well with Uyghur moving on. Like we've talked about in an article earlier this week that Forsling can definitely step in there. He can definitely be that number one guy. But looking around past those options on the left side. They have Lucas Carlson, Mark Stahl, Michael Delzato, and John Ludwig's a guy that the organization likes, but has dealt with a couple injuries and whatnot, and he was out for most of the year this year. So you're looking at that kind of crop of guys where you're going to be using this year, but next year they're going to have maybe 15, $16 million to make a move to get another guy. And then you also got to look at Gus Forsling, who is making $2 million. His contract's going to expire a couple years down the line where he might be
He's
looking
got 2 years
for a raise.
left, right?
Yeah,
2
two
years.
more years left where he might be looking for a raise after that, depending on what you get out of him. Which for picking Forsling over Uyghur was the right move there, and he is a bona fide top pair defenseman. They will work well with Aaron Ekblad. So that's a
Mhm.
guy the Panthers might want to keep around and give him the
We'll see.
five.
That's a ways away. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's a ways away, but
They're not
that's
even
something you
thinking
have to
about
think about when you're thinking about cap space is what would these guys want? Who would you want to keep around before you make that kind of brash move to take on a Jonathan Huberdeau, or I've seen before people talking about Austin Matthews or maybe a Patrick Kane being available.
it.
Kane
Sure.
might be an interesting one just because he might be a bit shorter term. Maybe he takes less money, but I would be more in the short term with him if he wants to win another Stanley Cup somewhere. But that's all next year. Depends on if he gets dealt at the deadline and if he likes where he gets traded. Like the Panthers aren't going to be in on Patrick Kane at the deadline because they don't have the money for that. Their deadline acquisition's Anthony Duclair when he comes back from injury.
What about Mackenzie Weegar returning as a free agent?
That's a bit interesting because Florida doesn't have. They're looking at the amount of defensemen that are out there on the market. There aren't really that many that can be acquired via free agency. And the best one I've seen was a guy like Matt Dumba. But it just depends on if
Klingberg will be a free agent again.
Klingberg will be a free agent again. I forgot about that. He signed a 1-year deal.
Because we didn't expect him to sign 1 year, right? Yeah.
Yeah. So he'll be back in the market. So you're looking at like Klingberg and Dumba as your two guys next year that you're looking at. And then Mackenzie Weegar will be in the fray. It just depends on if he really feels comfortable signing that deal after being dealt the way he was. Because this was something that happened fairly quickly between Zito acquiring Matthew Tkachuk because he wanted Matthew Tkachuk. It had nothing to do with the negotiations, but it just depends on if Weegar would want to negotiate in good faith after thinking he was going to get a deal done and then getting traded to Calgary.
Did he really think he was going to get a deal done though? Huberdeau did. I don't think Weegar was ever under such illusions. I mean, they talked, but I mean, did Weegar really think the Panthers could afford him?
I don't know. That's a good question.
I don't think so. I think Weegar always knew he was going to become a free agent, unless some miracle money in Florida opened up.
Which, yeah.
I mean, honestly, I don't think that we ever thought that the Panthers could afford. We've been saying it for 1.5 years now. Weegar's going to get paid, and Florida can't afford it.
Yeah, it just depended on if he wanted to take.
If we're saying that, his agent's saying he knows it. He knows it.
Yeah. Yes, but
Huberdeau thought he was getting signed.
Yeah. It just depends on
a different deal. Huberdeau's ticked about this thing. I don't know that Weegar's all that either surprised or bitter about it.
Yeah. On that same
bitter. I'm not so
sure. On that same token though, like he knew he wasn't going to be signing with Florida if he was a free agent for Florida. So I wouldn't know if he would sign that contract with them.
Things change in a year, though. That's all I'm saying. Things change.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah. That's all.
Yeah. Maybe.
I don't think it's happening either. I mean, because again, Florida didn't have the money for him this year. They don't. Yeah. So but something crazy could happen. Again, never say never.
Yeah, and I mean, looking down the line, a name that I've seen pop up that people would want to see in Florida is Austin Matthews, and that does line up to when Sergei Bobrovsky's no movement clause goes down to 16 teams. But you're looking at like the Panthers are going to need to find a team that's willing to take on that money, and if a team is negotiating them, knowing that they're going to be using that money to sign an Austin Matthews and become a pretty much a super team at that point. If you're looking at Barkov, Tkachuk, all these guys, I wouldn't necessarily know if a team would be willing to take on that money if that's what's going to happen, unless Florida's willing to fork up some assets. And as we know, Florida doesn't necessarily have the assets to really make anything happen unless you're like putting in Samoskevich, a 2030 first-round pick, whatever. I don't think that's going to happen either.
Agreed.
Yeah, like it's going to take a lot to move a Sergei Bobrovsky. So unless you're willing to kind of hamper signing other guys with the money that the Panthers
have, it will be easier to move.
It will be easier to move.
It will be an easier to after because again, this was a 5-year deal wrapped in a 7-year contract. So it also becomes more buyoutable after year 5. So if you wanted to do that.
Yeah. So there's ways out of the contract, but
after year 5.
Yes. And that's when Matthews becomes available. But at the same token, it's probably not get outable enough to the point where they can get Matthews.
I wouldn't bet. I mean, listen, if Matthews were to become available 2 years down the road, right? I mean, we talk about a lot can happen between now and next. A lot can happen between now and then. Toronto may not ever let him out of their sight. Every team in the league would be beating down the door trying to get him. You're going to have the Arizona Coyotes, his hometown team, will be 2 years into their 3-year deal, we think, in Tempe. And they would be a year away from their new arena being opened in Tempe. That's a game changer for the Arizona Coyotes. He might want to go home. I don't know.
Yeah,
there's a lot that could happen. Listen, the New York Rangers have all the money in the world. Maybe once, who knows? The Florida Panthers are on a long list of people who would, yeah, sure, if we could do it, yeah, let's do it. But can you? I mean, every team in the league wanted Keith Tkachuk, but he wouldn't sign a long-term deal with any of those teams. So it's also up to the player. Where does the player want to go? And I think he might just want to stay in Toronto where he's a superstar. He might. I don't know.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking when I was reading that one as well, where you might want to like make moves to free up the money to get him, but if he signs in Toronto, then you kind of messed up there, and there isn't necessarily a plan to fall back.
You would know what the temperature gauge is there before you make any kind of move like that. You got to know. They would know through back channels. They would know.
Yes. Yeah, like they have a guy that has the agent, and the agent lets them know the temperature. Then that kind of would help them there, but just
or you would have a good idea. You may not have a guarantee because we've seen it around the National Hockey League, where you've seen teams clear space and not be able to do anything with it, kind of in a panic mode, like we got to do this because this is coming and it never comes. But in that case, I would think that. If you thought you had a real opportunity to get an Austin Matthews, then you start clearing the deck. But until then, it's business as usual.
yeah. And then on the other token, there was Columbus that didn't necessarily know they were going to be in the Johnny Gaudreau sweepstakes, and they get him by just sweeping in there out of nowhere and getting him in there. And then they have to give up a guy like Oliver Bjorkstrand for not that much to bring him in.
That was
so
they're right. That was Frank Vetrano going to the Rangers for a 4th-round pick.
Yeah,
that was a pure salary cap though.
Yeah, and I mean he's Bjorkstrand's a better player than Vetrano was for sure, and Seattle got themselves a nice little player for a pretty cheap amount of money.
They're pretty similar, actually. Bjorkstrand's a pretty good player, and he came with a contract that Frank Vetrano did not have. Frank Vetrano was not in Florida's plans. He was a free agent. Bjorkstrand's not bad.
Oh yeah, I'm just saying. Seattle got a really good player with him for a 4th-round pick, albeit with a contract. But Seattle didn't necessarily have much money on the books, so Seattle's building something there. They've been making a couple big moves during the offseason.
They'll be fine.
Yeah. Like they got Burakovsky this offseason as well. They've been making some moves there, and they're getting some young pieces in there as well. They got Shane Wright at 4. I thought that was a really good pick for them.
Yeah.
So
fell right into their laps. Yeah, they didn't expect that. Good for them. Yeah.
Indeed. But looking at these, we got a doozy here that we can go over real quick. Panthers should shop Ekblad due to injury history.
Should they?
Should they?
Really? They should?
I don't think so myself, but what are you thinking?
No. What's he, 25 years old? And he's had 2 fluky kind of knee injury things?
Yeah. No. And looking at the way he came back from both of those injuries, they were both kind of fluky injuries. And he's a guy that trains a lot and knows how to build himself.
Yeah, he came back he got hurt in the Dallas. Yeah, exactly like you said, Colby. He got hurt in that game in Dallas in 2021. came back this year gangbusters, as good or as better. That he was having a career year this year, and then he has that fluky deal in Anaheim, and then he had a good playoff. So no, I've got zero problem with Aaron Ekblad. He's part of the core, although it's a rapidly shrinking core or an adding core, however you want to look at it. But yeah, I mean, you've already got. Listen, I talked to somebody about this not too long ago. When it comes to Aaron Ekblad, you've got him for $7.5 million for the next 3 seasons. What kind of a raise is he going to ask for? What do you think? What do you think that Aaron Ekblad in 3 years is going to want? $9.5, $10 million? That sound fair?
Yeah, it sounds
Okay.
fair.
He's already making 7.5, so it's not that big of a jump. So you're already giving him 7.5, $2 million on top of that. So I think in that vein, now you might say he's not worth 9.5. Well, that's a different story, but that's 3 years down the road. I'm just saying he's a part of your thing. He's 25, 20, whatever he is. He's still growing into this. He's still a very good defenseman. Cale Makar is the best in the NHL. We saw that in the Stanley Cup Finals, or if at least it was amplified in the Stanley Cup Final. But you've got a pretty darn good one here in Aaron Ekblad, and how do you replace him? So that's the other thing. They should shop Aaron Ekblad. How do you replace him? Who are you going to replace him with?
Yeah, exactly. Like there aren't that many defensemen on the market that they can replace him with, and they don't have any picks to really trade to get that type of guys. They already gave it up for Ben Sherratt, Claude Giroux, Matthew Tkachuk. So all of a sudden, the cupboard's pretty bare to make any more changes, and Aaron Ekblad's not necessarily the guy you'd want to give up to make those changes. And I mean, you look at the way Ekblad has bounced back from these injuries. They haven't made him a worse skater. He's a guy that is always out there training and making sure his skating's up to par. And you look at the way he's come back every time. He always becomes a better skater every time he comes back from one of those. It's not like the knee is completely broken and he's out there skating like a hooligan like I am when I go skating. So there's a lot of differences between what you think of when you're looking at an injury-prone guy and Ekblad, who just had two freak incidents and came back better than before. And I think you're going to see that type of guy with Ekblad this year. And we've already seen him skating at the ice den. He was skating there during development camp, so we got to look at him. And he's been posting videos online. He's the type of guy that always puts work into that type of deal, and he's gonna come back the same player he was last year. Also,
and I thought it was neat that you just compared your skating style to his, so that was pretty cool.
Yeah, I can't even tie my damn skates correctly. But yeah, there's a lot of people who comment on if they can play better than these guys. If you're actually playing hockey, you'd know you're not. But on another token, congratulations to Aaron Ekblad on getting married. He got married the other day. So congratulations to him for that.
Yep. Congratulations to the Ekblads. Nice couple. They looked like a very nice ceremony here in Fort Lauderdale, and very nice.
Of course, had to congratulate him before we move on to our last topic here. We're saving the best one for last. So these new look Panthers, with the physicality they have, will make the Stanley Cup final. This is from Chris. What do you think?
Well, I mean, we'll have to wait and see. I mean, yeah, I know that's not what you want to hear. Yeah, I mean, they're a contender, right? I don't know where they're going to end up in the standings. I don't know what they're going to end up doing this year, but this team was built to win right now. And regardless of the changes, yeah, I mean, every addition has been made for that. I mean, to make a deep run in the playoffs. Last year, it didn't happen. That team was built to make a deep run in the playoffs, and it did not happen. They went in 2 rounds, got swept by Tampa Bay. I don't know if you all remember. So you would think that the natural progression, of course, is for going to the conference final or even the Stanley. It doesn't work that way. It doesn't work that way in the NHL. Just because you made it to the second round this year doesn't mean you're going to make it to the third. It just doesn't work that way. So a lot of things have to go right. I mean, a lot of things went right for Florida in the first round against Washington. They were, that far away of an empty net goal from being down 3-1 to the Capitals. They end up winning in overtime on Carter Verhaeghe's goal and end up winning that series. So a lot has to go right in the playoffs. Nothing went right against Tampa Bay in round 2, and a lot of it's on them. And I'm not saying that the Panthers didn't have puck luck or anything like that. That was self-inflicted wounds for Florida. But it's hockey. Yeah, I'm just rambling on. Hockey is just such a different deal that you just don't know. You just don't know. Get into the playoffs and see what happens.
Yeah, like the thing with this roster is that it doesn't necessarily have the same dynamic aspect as last year's, where you had Uyghur and Huberdeau being these really good puck passers that
Sure.
activated things,
Mason
and
Marchment.
you're losing a lot in Marchment and Giroux. And the roster's lost so many pieces. And even if you're looking at Frank Vetrano and Owen Tippett aren't there necessarily. Owen Tippett didn't produce that much. He created a few chances there. But,
Yeah,
I
but
mean,
those guys weren't even here the last month of the season. So, I mean.
Yeah. But they were replaced by Giroux and Marchment, too. But, like, the depth has really... The depth has really taken a hit there. If you're looking at who was there at the start of the season last year, and then all of a sudden you're plugging in guys like Nick Cousins and Rudolph Balcers, who haven't necessarily produced a lot of points at the NHL level and are more of a fourth line type of guy. And you're also adding maybe a question mark in Colin White if he can stay healthy, if he can produce and keep up with some of these guys. And there are so many things changing. And then especially looking at the defense where Mackenzie Weegar's not there. So all of a sudden the left side of your defense is Gus Forsling and a few question marks unless they decide to move Brandon Montour to the left side there, have Montour Gudis, and then a third pair with a few question marks. But there are a lot of different questions that you'd have to ask.
There's a lot of what ifs, no doubt. But there were a lot of what ifs going into the 2021 season. A lot of unknown variables. I like the addition of a guy like Cousins. Florida's bottom 6 is going to be much tougher to play against, I think. Especially that fourth line, it's going to be really good to play against. I know you're taking a hit defensively with Mackenzie Weegar, but the forwards are going to be much more defensively minded. And, this is still a very good team. And,
it is. Like I'm thinking
it's still a very good team.
I'm thinking it finishes third in the Atlantic, but on that kind of token, you have guys that can play that more of a physical game, more of a defensive game. And then you're looking at Matthew Tkachuk. That was everything Florida was missing during the series against Tampa, where they needed a guy that can drive the net and get those tough goals, which they didn't necessarily get in anybody once Mason Marchment was out of the lineup. They were kind of playing from the perimeter there, trying to get a good shot off, and that's not necessarily going to work all the time when you're playing against one of the best goaltenders in the world, and Andrei Vasilevsky, who can stop pretty much any shot you put on him. The thing with Vasilevsky is that you need to get up in close and find those holes with the rebounds, which was what Mason Marchment was for the Panthers, and they didn't necessarily have anyone that stepped up and played that same type of game. So if they get into the playoffs there, Anthony Duclair's back to add that speed to the game again, which that's another thing I was concerned about with the Panthers because you're missing another one of those speed guys that puts up a lot of points during the regular season that can help them win those games that are just those quick regular season games. You're missing a lot of that with Duclair out. But you get that back during the playoffs, so you still have that type of player, and then you have those guys that can slow the game down, get those goals the way the playoff game works. So that's maybe where you can say this team can make it deeper in the playoffs. But as you said, you got to wait and see. But Matthew Tkachuk's the type of player that moves the needle, and then you're also looking at a new system under Paul Maurice that will help the team become more defensive sound Of course, that's going to have a little bit of a learning curve there a little bit to start the season. I can see them having a little bit of a slump to start the season while they're trying to learn the system a little bit more. But I think at the end of the day, they're going to finish third in the Atlantic and have a good chance at making a run in the playoffs.
There you go. And listen, we're going to talk a lot about new systems and all that stuff as we get closer to training camp or even in training camp. The truth of it is the systems aren't much different. I mean, systems in the NHL, it's a little bit of language here and there, a little bit here. These are all veteran guys. They're all going to adjust right to it. They've all done it before. So it's really not that much of a change.
Yeah, like you're looking at the younger guys on the team, aside from the ones that we said are going to compete for a roster spot. But the only guys that aren't really veterans on the team are Spencer Knight and Anton Lundell, who are the only two players that were drafted by the Panthers outside of Barkov and Ekblad that were regulars last year. So, I mean, that's an interesting part there.
Yeah.
It's hard to believe for sure. And their Panthers are missing the guy like Huberdeau now that owns every record in the record book. Barkov probably will own a lot of those records by the end of the season, depending on how things shake out. And we will have something on that later in the week that will give you a little bit of a tracker there. So be on the lookout for that. But
yeah, I'm writing that story.
I already started writing that.
Go get him, Colby.
Yeah, but anyways, it's been great talking with you guys on the FHN podcast. Be sure to subscribe to Florida Hockey Now Plus for the best content from both myself and George. And also be on the lookout for those 2 exclusive episodes for FHN Plus subscribers. Once October starts and we'll have the season underway, we'll get you some exclusive episodes, either whether it be interviews with guys on the team or just analysis type stuff. That'll be our little exclusives for our subscribers. But thanks for the support throughout the year. I know it's a slow month of August here, but we will have the content for you. And you guys have a good one.
Goodbye, everybody.